All right, everybody, thanks for listening to our next episode of Life at the Lake Campus, where today I'm going to be interviewing junior nursing major Gwyn Elking. She is from St. Henry, and she has pretty much every possible nursing experience that a student could ask for, which is why I was really glad that you accepted to come on to the podcast. So thanks for showing up today, Gwyn.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, so the plan for this is to walk through just the typical progression of a nursing major here at the Lake Campus. It's one of our biggest majors now. It's a really successful program. So before we even get started, huge kudos to Lynn Frank and Liz Gramza because they've got an outstanding program going so far. And from what I can tell, they seem to run a pretty tight ship.
Oh, absolutely. They are awesome people. I've really learned a lot from each of them. And it's just crazy that in the 2 full school years that I've had in the nursing program, how quickly time has gone and how much I feel like I've blossomed in my education.
All right, so getting into it then, what kind of led you into the nursing path? Like at the end of high school, how did you know that's what you wanted to do? And then once you decided that, what were the steps you took to start off?
See, that's really funny you say that because I was that high school student that was like, I will never go to the Lake Campus. Like, I would not have any good things to say about it, even though I had nothing to base that decision off of. And I actually didn't start out in nursing. So I started college at Ohio State Lima thinking I was going to transfer right away and go to Columbus and never look back. And actually, I had the exact opposite experience that I was expecting. And even in high school, I always kind of had a gut feeling that nursing would be a good choice for me. And I just never let myself act on it. And then once I kind of went through some of the things I did, my first semester of college, I was like, yeah, this is definitely going to be a safer route. I really liked the just variety of it, and despite like not having a confident decision in what I wanted to do with my career, I was excited that I would have no issues like finding a job or just seeing a bunch of different realms of nursing.
I find it kind of funny you say you weren't confident because like I said, you've gotten every possible experience and you've tended to excel at all of them. So, in those first few years then, what types of classes do you look at? Do you jump into any type of hands-on experience yet, or is that kind of a later thing?
Yeah, so your first year here is going to be a lot of prereqs. They can kind of get long just because, in my opinion, I was so ready to just get started with the nursing program. And then once you finally go through the process of applying and getting accepted, depending on if you were a traditional admit versus direct admit, granted, that's been 2 years ago for me, so things could easily have changed with that since I've done it. And then once you get in your first year, you'll take your first semester, you won't really have any clinical experience. It's all didactic. And then your second semester for me, that's when we finally went to the lab, started doing some practice simulations before then my now junior year, we're like really emerging into the hospital setting and truly taking care of people as if we were a nurse.
Okay, so you mentioned the lab. I know walking by the nursing stations and everything, there's a bunch of different equipment. What kind of things do they have in there to help train you guys?
Yeah, so there are, in the open area of the lab, there are like 6 hospital beds, and then there are 3 like private rooms. We have some simulation I can't even think of what I want to call them. I want to say dummies, but that's not the right word I should use. Anyway, and you practice skills on them. So we've done things like inserting catheters, wound dressing changes, inserting NG tubes, a lot of procedures that are granted for nurses that they want you to be confident in before going into the hospital setting and being assigned to a patient who may get an order for this and get that procedure. And you should be able to do that competently when in the hospital setting.
Okay, so then how is it that you really get into the hospital setting? Is that something that you have to look for yourself? Is it something through the program?
Yeah, so that's through the program. With each of your classes, you'll have an associated clinical, and you have to register that for that just like it were a regular class. And then it does differ a little bit for each person. Usually there's only 8 people per clinical group, and I've had experiences at Coldwater Hospital. I've had experiences at St. Rita's. I know that there are some opportunities at Joint Township. I personally chose Coldwater because I work there, and B, it's closer to home for me, and I thought that I would get the best experience there. So you do have a little bit of leeway with picking, but sometimes you still need to stay open, and things come up, life happens, and just staying flexible with your clinical schedule, your placement, things like that.
All right, so obviously you're going to have to take a wide range of classes, not just nursing stuff. That's how I got to know you, is through my behavioral neuro class and a couple of others. What does the schedule look like outside of your nursing program?
So for me, I do work a little bit. I have two jobs. One is in a restaurant, the other one's in the hospital working as a nursing assistant. I work casual, so for me, and this will really depend on the person, so when I transferred here, it put me behind a year, so I had a lot of time to work full time and really save up money so that during these breaks and whatnot, I can kind of take the time to relax versus have to worry about making X dollars per month to pay my bills, and I don't really worry about that as much as maybe the rest of my classmates. And so I really try prioritizing life outside of school as well, spending time with my friends, my family. I do have a dog that I adore with my whole life, and so I like to get quality time with her as well. And I think it's really important to emphasize when you are going through this extremely fast-paced and at times extremely stressful program, it's equally as important to make time for yourself and the things that you love.
So I'm really glad you brought that up, because one of the things I did want to ask you about was some of your stuff outside of school that's still kind of school related, if that's a good way to describe it. So as I've mentioned to you before we started talking on this podcast, I interviewed Hannah Ranley yesterday, who is part of a little trio that we've assembled for the Assure group, where we go out and give some mental health awareness and suicide prevention talks. So I was wondering if you could kind of talk about your experience doing that a little bit too.
Yeah, and I will actually address, so I am also minoring in psychology, so some of the things that Josh had mentioned in the past with how he met me, the typical nursing major probably would not have that experience, but like I said, because I hadn't taken my degree in 5 years, I've had more of these opportunities come up. And so I was approached by you about this time last year to do this trio for Assure, which is area, suicide. I can't even think of what the acronym is.
Support resources.
Yeah, that's terrible. But so what we've been doing is going around to areas. We've talked to heritage groups, KFC groups, and usually the range that we've talked to are older people, and just kind of bringing more awareness to mental health, suicide, and kind of educating some of these people on really seeing some of the signs. I personally it's kind of funny the way it all happened, because you had approached me, and actually a month or two later I lost a family member to suicide, and so it's kind of increased my passion for it a little bit, and I really just enjoy talking to people and having the knowledge to be able to educate these people, and it's been a really great opportunity. And I would honestly encourage anyone, whether in the psychology realm or the nursing realm, to kind of seek it out, because I know that you are kind of looking for people to take it over once Hannah and I graduate. So
Yeah, and you guys have done spectacular so far. I've been really impressed at just how much you guys kind of just took the reins and kind of just ran with everything. So it's not an easy topic to discuss, and you guys have done awesome with it. So since we're getting kind of close to our wrap-up mark, just a couple other things I'd like to ask you. First, is there anything specific that I didn't ask about that you think people need to know if they're going into the nursing program?
Oh gosh, I could talk about this for a long time. So I would certainly say, really take the time to research study methods, and I think that goes for all majors, but nursing especially. One thing that I haven't really had this experience, but Liz and Lynn have all told us, take the time so that you understand a lot of these fundamental concepts, so that when they come up in future classes, you're not constantly teaching yourself. So for me, a lot of things I do is use active recall in the Pomodoro method. And it really is just a matter of Google searching study methods, and just I would encourage people who want to get into the program to trial and error some of these things prior to getting into the program, because you do kind of start with your feet running with some of these classes. And I'm not saying that to intimidate anyone by any means, but it's just, I will certainly say it's faster paced, and a little more complex. And so just making sure that you are as ready for it as you can be. You can never be fully ready, and it's hard to be content with that. But as you progress through the program, it will get easier in being ready to face the unknown.
All right, then final big question I'm going to ask everybody on here. Being a student towards the end of your career, do you have any one final big piece of advice to students either starting off or those trying to get through right now?
I would certainly say put yourself out there. Definitely demonstrate to your professors that you want to be there, you're interested in the content, even though at times it may not be the most enjoyable thing. I will say that I have done that, and I think because of that, I've made some awesome relationships with my instructors, and it's made it incredibly easy to feel comfortable talking to them if I had a question or maybe asking for a recommendation, whereas to the opposite, you're just kind of coming and going. And if you do kind of need that extra hand, sometimes it might be a little bit more difficult. And not that there's any wrong way about that, but I would certainly say try to make an appropriate relationship with your instructors, and they'll help you out.
All right, that's awesome. That's all I have for you, Gwyn. Thank you again
Yeah.
very much for doing this. So, like I said at the end of the last one, if there are any questions that I'm missing here, please either send me an email to joshua.ricker@wright.edu, comment on our Facebook posts. If there's anybody else that you think that should be on this podcast, again, we're open to recommendations. So I just want to take a second to say thank you again to Gwyn. That was a really great interview, and I will talk to everybody else next time.